Hi everyone and welcome back. In this episode we will talk about conditional access policies. We will look into deploying multiple policies at once and we will deep dive into the device compliant policy. We will switch it from read-only mode to enabling it. We will see how we target it and what is the user experience before and after enabling this policy. So if this sounds interesting for you, let's jump right in. To do a brief review, we started with what a digital identity is, what on-premises looks like, what the cloud looks like, how do we create an identity in the on-prem directory and synchronize it to the cloud by using this tool called Entra Connect. So we talked about provisioning users together with the hashes of their passwords into Entra. And later on, we have enabled multifactor authentication using the Microsoft Authenticator app, leveraging passkeys. And in our last episode, we have Entra joined a device by leveraging the Autopilot capability from Intune. And therefore, we allowed Elisa, our user, which has an Entra joined device only, which has line of sight to our domain, to access a file share within our environment. So in this episode, we want to confirm that only the users with an Entra joined device can access our environment. And we do this by leveraging conditional access policies. We want to understand who wants to access our environment. Is it a user or maybe a group of users? Is it an agent? And what location are they using? Where are they trying to access the environment from? Would also like to know what is the device the user tries to use. Is it a Mac? Is it a Windows machine? Is it maybe a Linux? What is the app? Is it a modern app? Is it a web browser? Or maybe is it a legacy app? That matters as well. And we can configure all this in our signals. And lastly, what if the user now connects from, say, Germany and in 2 minutes connects from the United States? That marks it as a risky user, so we don't want to allow that kind of access. So we put together all these signals and then we determine what we want to do. Do we want to allow the access, or maybe we want to enforce the MFA, or do we want to block the access for this user? So let's go ahead and see this configuration first in our Entra portal. Under the policies blade, we can see the number of policies which are already enabled by Microsoft in my tenant. So blocking legacy apps is something that happens to all users no matter the application they would like to access. If the users want to access the Microsoft Azure Management Portal, we want to trigger MFA, and then again, no matter the user type. Now, when it comes to admins, there are certain powerful admin roles which we want to target. So Microsoft determined that we want to require MFA for all the roles that you see on the screen, no matter where the users are connecting from. And lastly, all users are required to use MFA no matter what application they would like to access, with the exception of the break the glass accounts and the synchronization account, for example. We have the option to create these policies from within a template. So without having to go through each individual tab, we can just navigate to the templates blade, choose the right security model that we want for our environment. So Zero Trust is the recommended one from Microsoft. We choose the policies that we want to apply. We can review to see that it matches what we want to achieve. And then we just click the review and create button and we click create. So instead of having to navigate here and create each individual policy from within the template, let's see what the alternative is. We navigate to the Microsoft 365 portal, and in the setup page, we can see that Microsoft provides us multiple options. So we have configured MFA already, we're synchronizing users from the on-prem to the cloud, and we have the option to configure conditional access policies. So let's go ahead and do just that. We have a nice summary about what conditional policies are, and we also have additional links to additional resources like the What If tool, which is something we're going to use later on in this demo. So let's get started. Microsoft suggests creating 2 or more break the glass accounts, which should be used specifically for that. In a scenario where our admin accounts, which are assigned to individual users, can no longer be used, we can leverage these break the glass accounts, which, by the way, should be created and not be handed over to any user. And the password should be a very long one and stored in some vault within the premises of your environment, as well as multi-factor authentication should be configured for this by leveraging FIDO keys or certificate-based authentication should you want to use that for these break the glass accounts. The bottom line is these accounts should not be used by any users, but only in case of emergency, as the name says. Now, we can see the existing policies that are configured in the environment, so the ones which we've just walked through earlier on, and we can enable or disable them from here. And we can see as well a templates category. We will be choosing the Zero Trust one which Microsoft recommends, and let's review what this one includes. We can see the list from the previous portal, as well as the license requirements for some of them. So for risky users, for example, you need to have either a Entra ID P2 license or a Microsoft 365 E5, which already includes this P2 license. We've seen the list, so now let's go ahead and create them. We can start ticking the box for the ones that we want to assign, and we can see once we do this that all of them basically are enabled in the report only mode. So I'm going to go ahead and tick all the boxes just to have them all created in report only mode in my tenant, so that I have all the Zero Trust policies which Microsoft recommends in my tenant. In the next blade, we can see the MFA methods they suggest enabling from within this portal. And interesting enough, it doesn't see the Microsoft Authenticator app of my environment, but that's not a problem. I'm just gonna go ahead and tick this box. It sees the FIDO2 key option, which I have configured as an authentication method at the tenant level, as well as the temporary access passwords. We have the option to choose SMS or calls as well, but as you can see, these fall under the low category as Microsoft no longer recommends using these in the environment if we have the option to use the other ones. We go next, we confirm that it looks good and that we enable everything we want to enable in the read-only mode. And here we have it. Well, it complains about 4 of them because we have them already configured, so that's no problem. We go next, and now when we move to the Entra portal and we go ahead and refresh the page, they just show up. 4 of them, the ones that are created by Microsoft, are on, and all the other ones are showing in report-only modes. We have some of them which are duplicated, so let's go ahead and delete those. I'm just going to fast forward through this part. Now, the policy we want to configure in this episode is the one about compliant devices. I want to see what happens before and after the enablement of this policy. So once again, we have this targeted for all users. Well, in the real world environment, you wouldn't necessarily do this unless you provide devices to all your users, which you can Entra join. We exclude certain users and certain roles from this policy. So because I don't have an Entra join device for my account, I want to have that excluded from my environment, as well as a break glass account, for example. We determine where we target this policy and whether we exclude anything. So we target it for all apps. When it comes to the network, we do not configure anything in particular because we want the users to be showing a compliant device no matter the network they are connecting from, and no matter the device they are connecting from either, or the client application they are using. So we go ahead and we leave these options to not configure as Microsoft created it. Microsoft configured this by default to require multi-factor authentication, to require the device to be marked as compliant, or to have the device be Entra hybrid joined. Now we're gonna untick this box because we are interested in requiring MFA, but requiring the device to be marked as compliant as well. So from the option that we have here to require only one of the selected controls, we're actually gonna require all of them. We configure this in the report only mode for now, and let's go ahead and see the experience of our user. Elisa is logging in with the PIN. So we're having Windows Hello for Business configured for her account, and once she lands on her machine, she launches the browser, so Edge in our case, navigates to myapps.microsoft.com, and because she was issued a primary refresh token by Entra during the login process to the machine, she can just access the portal without being prompted. Behind the scenes, Windows Hello for Business is being used as MFA, and therefore the user was allowed to access the environment. When launching in private mode for the same browser, when she navigates to the My Apps portal, she's being prompted to log in because device information is not being sent to Entra when doing in private browsing. And this is a very important step for troubleshooting as well. So she entered her credentials, she enters the PIN, and now she is able to access the environment. And this is because our policy is not yet enforced. Now, let's go ahead and see this in the Azure sign-in logs. But before we do, let's enable our policy first, because it's going to take a little while until this one gets enabled. So again, we target all users. Again, in the real world scenario, you would target only a group of users. I exclude my user from the policy. We target all apps, so I don't care what application is being accessed. You need to provide a compliant device and MFA in order for you to access that environment. So we confirm that the configuration is complete. We enable it. So now let's use the what if tool just to confirm that the policy is being applied at this moment for our user. So we choose Elisa, we choose an Office 365 cloud app. It doesn't really matter, right? Because we're targeting all apps. We choose a Windows device platform because that's what Elisa is using, and the client application. So we press the what if button and we see that we have two policies which are being applied currently. One other is in report only mode, but the required compliant device one is enabled. So now when we go ahead and check Elisa's logs, we have to bear in mind that it takes a little while for the information to be updated in the Entra portal. Over here we see that multifactor has been triggered and the logins were all successful. The My Apps sign-in log, and we see that it has been a successful login attempt. We see device information and the fact that the device has been Azure AD joined. We see that MFA has been triggered, and then the Conditional Access tab, we see that this has been successfully applied. I was mentioning earlier on that Windows Hello for Business, the Windows Hello for Business login acts as a silent MFA, if you want to call it that way. Now let's switch back. This time, we will perform the same. We will launch Edge, navigate to the My Apps portal, and see whether we are allowed to authenticate or not. And we are, because we have a primary refresh token. And we launched the regular browser. In private mode, however, the user is prompted to log in because no device information is being sent during the login attempt. So the user provides her credentials, so the username and the PIN, and this time receives an error. And the reason she gets an error can be seen under the More Details tab as well. The device state says unregistered. So because she launched Edge in private mode, device information is not being sent over to Entra during the authentication flow to the My Apps portal, and therefore the user is not allowed to access the app because she doesn't provide a compliant device. So if we go back to the logs and we refresh the page, well, this particular one is the previous one. So let's just confirm. This was the in private browsing before having the policy enabled. So we can see, I clicked on the interrupt, but there is no device information, there is no compliancy here. And if we go to the conditional access page, we can see which MFA policy applied and which did not, but we don't have the device policy here. This allowed Elisa to access the My Apps portal from a non-compliant device at that stage. Now, we refresh one more time and we see this authentication attempt. We can see by navigating to the device information tab that the device is Entra joined, that it is compliant. We see the device ID, and under the conditional access blade, we can see as well there are two policies which have been applied now. One which was triggering MFA, the other one which was requiring the device to be marked as compliant. So the device info tab matters a lot in troubleshooting scenarios here. If you don't see device being marked as compliant over here, then that means that the user is not sending over information about the device when performing the login. Now, refreshing one more time, we see the failure. And this is the very last login attempt in private mode after enabling the policy. So we see it's a failure, and we see that it says, hey, the device is not providing a required state. So the device is not compliant. Moving to the device info tab, we can see that there is no device ID, there is not compliant. So when we go to the conditional access page, we see again the two policies. The very first one is the one confirming that MFA has been successfully passed. However, the second policy is failed because device information hasn't been provided to Entra during the login process. And this is where the device info tab is very important for us. So going back to the Microsoft documentation, we can see that we configure conditional access policies and we don't really care about the location, but we care a lot about the device the user is connecting from. So in this scenario, we have blocked the access if the user did not log in from a compliant device. And that can be configured to happen even if you are logging in from a compliant device, but you use the InPrivate mode. This marks the end of this episode. Thank you for watching. I hope that this has been informative for you. And remember, when it comes to Azure, you always got your brother in the clouds. See you in the next one.